This week, hearings will begin in New York City at the Department of Financial Services to determine the regulation of virtual currencies like Bitcoins. It's even being suggested that Bit licenses may be considered. But just a day before the hearings are to begin, the U.S. Attorney's Office arrested two individuals for money laundering. One of them, Charlie Shrem, is the CEO of BitInstant and vice chairman of the Bitcoin Foundation. So this certainly doesn't give comfort to a market that's trying to gain credibility. And joining me now is Nick Colas, chief market strategist at Convergex. So Nick, you've noted that regulation is one of the hurdles that the coin needs to cross, and arrests like this certainly don't make it any easier.
No, that's right. Bitcoin is coming from a foundation in what they call the dark web, an area of the internet doesn't have a whole lot of disclosure or information around it, but we're trying to move it from that dark web to the lit web and into a real viable currency and money transaction system. But that transition, as you note, is a little bit rocky right now.
Right, we know that the whole Silk Road episode was pretty dark, lots of nefarious goings on. So let's say they get these bad guys out of Bitcoins. We've still got a long way to go before people actually start to use it. I mean, just because a retailer says they're going to accept it doesn't mean people are going to actually use it to buy something.
That's right. Bitcoin needs quite a bit of work still to become a really relevant point for most consumers. We've got to have regulation, obviously. We also have to have more adoption. There are a few retailers taking it, but I think it's more opportunistic to take advantage of some of these early Bitcoin millionaires that were made when the price went from $20 to $800 last year. And then finally, we need less volatility. The volatility of the currency is still pretty stomach churning for the average person who might want to use it.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up, was the volatility. For some people that are just trading in Bitcoin, they love it because they have a chance to make some money. But for the average person, we kind of like our currency to be stable.
That's right. Last year really was the coming out year for Bitcoin. It started at 20, went to 800, and then had periods between 60 and 80 in between. This year, I think it's going to have to show much less volatility. So far, it's doing that, actually. Even with the volatility around this arrest today, it's not anywhere near as bad as it was last year. But you're right. We have to have less volatility going forward.
Now, does an arrest of such a high-profile person make you a little nervous?
It doesn't, in fact, because at the end of the day, Bitcoin is got a fundamental value to it. It's a very efficient way to transfer money around the world. The problem is the early adopters, the early use cases were in some of these nefarious and very unsavory practices. They'll get cleaned up by the authorities, just as the authorities are also thinking about how to license it for its legitimate uses. Let's not forget, Federal Reserve, 2 regional feds wrote papers last year, published them online, saying they thought Bitcoin was a very good thing, a very positive development. So there are still a lot of support within government for Bitcoin.
Do you own any Bitcoin?
I do not. I love to write about it and talk about it, so I think it'd be a conflict of interest to own it myself.
All right, well, I don't own any Bitcoin either, and I'm guessing the guys that got arrested, I'm sure they don't own any more in their bank accounts as well. The Street's going to give you updates and postings on the Bitcoin hearings this week. I'm Deborah Borchardt reporting for The Street.